look, I enjoyed everything there was to enjoy about growing up on television. But there was a responsibility because I had a head on my shoulders and I was around other people who had head on their shoulders. So that access didn't really come down my path because I wasn't around those kind of elements.
Began with the kind of headline that freezes the scroll. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, gone at just 54, swept under the waves off Costa Rica's Caribbean coast. We were told it was an accidental drowning, a family vacation turned nightmare in the space of minutes. Official reports spoke of a sudden current, bystanders pulling him from the water, paramedics battling for 20 minutes before calling time. But the more we looked, the more the story resisted that neat, tragic bow. Here was a man, known as a strong swimmer, someone who kept himself fit, someone in the middle of work, life, fatherhood. How does a tide take down a man like that so swiftly, and with a rescuer right there who somehow makes it out alive?
Incident took place on Sunday in Costa Rica. He was on a family vacation. He was swimming off of the coast of a town called Cocles in the province of Limon. He was swimming at Playa Grande. I mean, I've visited Costa Rica a few times. I was there with my family a few years ago, and those currents can be very strong.
Warner wasn't just another Hollywood name. For millions, he was Theo Huxtable, the quick-witted, sometimes stubborn, always good-hearted son who helped redefine the Black family on primetime television. Off-screen, he steered clear of scandal, built a music career, directed, mentored, and lately opened up new conversations through his podcast. That clean record, that measured voice, made his sudden absence even harder to digest. And in the corners of the internet where mainstream coverage rarely treads, the whispers began immediately. Warner had been speaking too freely, moving in circles that did not appreciate his candor, and perhaps he had been marked. One of the loudest voices fanning those suspicions belongs to singer Jaguar Wright. Wright has never shied away from calling out what she sees as the industry's shadow network, a tangle of powerful names, private rituals, and ruthless silencing. In the days after Warner's body was flown home, she hinted that he had been preparing to reveal information about high-ranking entertainment figures, details that would shake both music and television. She claimed he'd confided in close friends about feeling watched in the weeks before Costa Rica, that certain people seemed unusually interested in his travel plans. To her, the drowning was too convenient, too similar to other so-called accidents that have taken away outspoken artists. She called it part of a whistleblower purge, the kind you only notice if you connect the dots.
And I'm not saying allegedly.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying, Sean Carter, you're a piece of shit. Taking Pimp C wasn't bad enough. You just want to go down there and you want to just remove all of the balls from every real gangster in Houston.
It didn't help that some details surrounding the incident felt mismatched. Why did rescue efforts fail so completely when Warner had the benefit of immediate bystander help? Why was the man who tried to save him, a stranger with no personal connection, left in critical condition, but later walked out of the hospital, stable and without long-term harm? Authorities say Warner was swept away by a current, but locals familiar with Playa Grande described the sea that afternoon as rough, yes, but not impossible. And the official narrative has already been revised, first a general drowning, then the emphasis on asphyxiation by submersion, a clinical phrasing that smooths over any deeper questions.
So why does it all come to a head now? Why now? Why?
Because he's the acceptable monster at this time, like R. Kelly was the last time I sat on this couch.
So who's next?
Y'all don't see the lineup?
Yeah, we see the...
This is where Wright's claims grow more pointed. She paints Warner as a man carrying explosive files in his head, perhaps in his possession, about the kind of underground dealings most people prefer to dismiss as urban legend, trafficking pipelines, financial back channels, and the unspoken agreements that keep certain names untouchable. She has tied these alleged networks to people like Sean Diddy, Combs, Jay-Z, and Beyonce, names that carry weight, money, and, according to her, a vested interest in keeping dissenters quiet. No documents have surfaced to support her accusations, but in the current climate, with Combs fighting his own high-stakes legal battles, her words have found an audience ready to believe.
I want you to think about this. Allegedly, Sean Carter is responsible for enacting Hype Williams to put Aaliyah on a faulty plane to move her out the way as punishment for rejecting him, and so he could level up Beyonce, who was struggling.
And she doesn't stop with Warner. Wright often circles back to the early 2000s, to a different loss that still fuels late-night debates, the plane crash that ended Aaliyah's life at 22. The official record tells of an overloaded aircraft, a pilot without proper credentials, traces of banned substances in his system, and a tragic plunge just seconds after takeoff in the Bahamas. But Wright insists the story didn't end there. In her telling, Aaliyah's fate mirrors what she believes happened to Warner. A targeted removal, staged to look like an accident, benefiting those who stood to gain from her absence.
She was unconscious. She didn't choose to get on that plane. There were phone calls made. There are witnesses who signed NDAs.
Why Aaliyah? Wright points to the overlap in her trajectory and Beyoncé's. Both R&B darlings, both stepping into acting, both poised for long careers. In the more fringe theory circles, the two were set on the same lane, but only one could dominate it. Beyoncé, according to these theories, was the chosen one, for reasons stretching into the realm of secret societies and entertainment's most guarded alliance. Aaliyah, whether by choice or by threat, was allegedly no longer playing along. The crash, they say, cleared the path. Wright has implied that certain people today are still guarding the real story, the same way she argues that Warner's true final days are being hidden behind medical reports and tourist-friendly explanations.
By the way, wasn't this all around the time when Aaliyah died?
Yeah.
And Beyonce's solo career was struggling?
It's worth remembering that conspiracy narratives like these thrive in the spaces where facts leave gaps. The Bahamian crash investigation found the plane to be about 700 pounds overweight, cargo misdirected in the days prior, and last-minute changes to the charter company. The pilot's record was questionable, his recent probation undisclosed to aviation officials, his license obtained under suspicious circumstances. To many that sounds like negligence. To Wright and those who agree with her, it sounds like a script, the kind that plays out again when someone inconvenient needs to vanish.
Why would any testimony about what happened leading up to it need to be covered under a non-disclosure agreement if there wasn't foul play?
Now, mind you, September 11th happened a week later. 9/11 happened a week later. Do you think that took away from it?
Once again.
In both Aaliyah's and Warner's cases, there's the detail of unease before the trip. For Aaliyah, it was reported that she voiced concerns about the safety of the small plane. For Warner, friends claim he spoke of feeling a strange pressure in the weeks before his vacation, as if eyes were on him. There's no paper trail, no public record of these warnings, just accounts from people close enough to have heard them. Exactly the sort of material that fuels speculation without ever crossing into court evidence.
Historic and frozen in time is this iconic character. What did that mean for television, and what does it still mean to this day?
Sam, Theo Huxtable was me. Theo Huxtable was my brothers. Theo Huxtable was the first time someone that looked like me saw someone that looked like himself on television. He was the epitome of what we as kids, in a certain community were growing up, but he was also an American story.
The atmosphere around Warner's passing has been primed for this kind of talk. His legacy is pristine, his reputation without the usual personal scandals that make it easy to dismiss a star's troubles. When someone like that is gone suddenly, and the reason given is something as mundane as a current on a tourist beach, it invites every theory in the book. Add in Wright's flair for tying present events to past unsolved mysteries, and we have a story that refuses to sit quietly in the obituaries. And in a culture that has long watched stars vanish in accidents just before they could speak out, whether that's fact, coincidence, or folklore, each similarity becomes another match to the fire. The official channels are finished with their statements. Accidental asphyxiation by submersion, case closed. But in the comment threads, on live stream rants, in private group chats, the connections are being drawn. Warner's name now sits on a list that some claim includes Aaliyah, Michael Jackson, Left Eye, and others. Figures whose sudden exit still haunt and whose stories in certain circles are far from over.
If you're a halfway intelligent person, when do you start questioning how lucky keep getting?
Right.
Jaguar Wright's voice sharpens when she speaks of Aaliyah, and in her telling, the parallels to Warner's last days are impossible to ignore. Both were loved by millions. Both were, according to whispers, uneasy before their trips. Both experienced sudden changes to their travel arrangements, and both were taken in what the official reports called an accident, yet in Wright's eyes looked more like the closing of a chapter someone else had written. Aaliyah's plane, she reminds us, was swapped at the last minute. The pilot's credentials were murky, his personal state questionable, and the weight on board exceeded safe limits. It was a stack of red flags. And yet, the flight still took off. Wright draws the line straight. These are not coincidences, they are signatures. A way of removing a voice without the splash of scandal, making it all appear as the unlucky turn of fate. She calls it the Hollywood playbook, an industry trick where sudden accidents mask much deeper agendas. It's clean, it's final, and it rarely leaves anything for investigators to piece together beyond technical faults and human error. And in Warner's case, the script feels familiar. A strong swimmer caught by a current, a would-be rescuer who survives without lasting injury. No hints of foul play in the reports, just a tidy conclusion and a closed file. That is why Wright refuses to let it go. She claims Warner's platform, especially his work on Not All Hood, was pulling too much attention to uncomfortable truths. In the podcast, he was willing to discuss exploitation, image control, and the way certain figures are elevated while others are boxed out. He tackled the myth of the monolithic Black experience and put space between himself and the sanitized narratives the industry prefers. To those who see patterns, speaking out like that, with clarity, charisma, and a built-in audience, is the kind of act that can shorten your career, or worse. In the weeks before his trip to Costa Rica, Warner recorded a particularly intense episode of Not All Hood that now stands out for its tone and subject matter. Listeners at the time may have brushed off his layered metaphors and circuitous storytelling as just another deep dive into cultural issues. But in hindsight, the rhythm and weight of his words feel deliberate. He spoke about storms that arrive without warning, about tides that pull people far from shore, and about the unseen architects who decide which voices are amplified and which are erased. The imagery was striking even then, but now it reads like a veiled chronicle of his own fate. The episode avoided naming specific individuals, but the themes were unmistakable. Warner drew on history, referencing powerful empires that thrived on controlling the narrative and punishing dissenters. He likened the entertainment industry to a gilded stage, where every performer is bound by contracts that are more than just legal. They are social, financial, and sometimes psychological chains. For regular listeners, it was an unusually somber departure from the show's usual mix of humor and sharp commentary, and it left a lingering unease that only deepened after news of his passing.
There are people who did short sales on their stocks right after that, made a lot of money, including Sean Carter. Now I'm going to ask you, why would non-disclosure agreements need to be signed for an accident?
Fans revisiting the episode have pointed to curious pauses in his delivery, moments where it sounded as if he was weighing how far he could go before crossing an invisible line. He spoke of messages carved in plain sight and truth that cannot be spoken without consequence. Phrases that now echo through online forums as possible hints of what he was holding back. Even the episode's title, an abstract reference to doors closing before their hinges break, has been dissected for hidden meaning, with some suggesting it symbolized a forced ending before his work reached its full strength. What's unsettling is how seamlessly these perceived clues fit into the broader suspicions about his demise. For those who believe he was under pressure from powerful figures, the podcast now plays like a carefully coded warning, a way to document his awareness without openly inviting retaliation. Others see it as a test, a way to gauge who among his audience could read between the lines and carry the conversation forward if he couldn't. Whether intentional or not, the episode has become a touchstone for speculation, fueling theories that Warner knew more than he could safely reveal. In this light, the podcast isn't just another part of his legacy. It becomes evidence in a larger, unfinished story. Each replay adds weight to the notion that Warner's final weeks were shaped by an awareness of danger, and that he may have been trying, in his own careful way, to pass the torch. If that's true, then the recording could be more than just entertainment. It could be a roadmap, pointing toward the very secrets and forces he warned about, waiting for someone brave enough to follow its trail. She insists Warner wasn't just a nostalgic face from a sitcom, but a man unafraid to challenge the system that raised him. If the whispers are right, that fearlessness could have placed him in the crosshairs. The theory goes like this: there are names and entities invested in keeping their empires intact. When someone starts hinting at what's behind the curtain, their image becomes a liability. Whether it's an overloaded aircraft in the Bahamas or a rip current on a sunny Costa Rican afternoon, the outcome is the same: a public shocked, a legacy frozen, and the questions quietly swept away. And the more we examine these cases side by side, the more uncanny the details become. Aaliyah's concerns about her flight went unheard. Warner's friends now recall subtle comments about being watched. For Aaliyah, there were industry relationships tied to powerful moguls whose influence still shapes music today. For Warner, there were recent remarks about predatory contracts, about artists being chewed up and replaced. The people Wright accuses, the same cluster of icons and executives she's been naming for years, sit at the intersection of both worlds. She believes there's a culture of fear keeping most insiders quiet. Careers, reputations, even personal safety are leveraged to enforce silence, and when someone refuses to play along, the playbook is ready. There's always a way to reframe the loss, a weather report, a maintenance error, a misjudged swim. In the official record, it will read as a tragic misfortune. In the unofficial one, it's a surgical strike.
If we get to the bottom of Tupac's, when that is finally revealed, 15 other will be revealed with it. And you will find that they were all committed by the same two people, father and son.
It's a dark lens to look through, but Wright urges people to see the wider arc. From Aaliyah in 2001 to Michael Jackson in 2009 to Left Eye in 2002, and now to Warner in 2025. She says the pattern is there if we choose to connect it. A loss, followed by tributes, mourning, and eventually, the quiet fade from headlines. Until the next time. And each time, those who benefit most from the vacancy step forward into the spotlight. Whether or not her allegations hold water, they ignite a simple but dangerous thought. What if the most public parts of these tragedies are just the cover stories? What if the truth lives in private files, guarded conversations, and the memories of people too frightened to speak? Wright is not frightened, or at least she doesn't act like it. She keeps talking, keeps linking names, keeps refusing to let the official version stand alone. And here's the part that should make us all uncomfortable. If Warner's demise, like Aaliyah's, really was the result of a calculated decision, then the people capable of arranging it are still out there, still powerful, still untouchable. Wright says more names will surface if enough people pay attention. That is both a promise and a warning. So the question lingers in the air, heavy and unresolved. If Malcolm-Jamal, Warner, and Aaliyah were silenced, who might be next? And what don't they want us to know? Stay sharp, stay curious, and until next time, keep watching the shadows.